Hi guys, in today's video I'm looking at efficiencies and I'm looking at the second in the series on the OCR A-level specification, which is the whole notion of allocative efficiency. And the criterion on the spec is explain what is meant by allocative efficiency. So it's that explain directive word, that scratch the surface understanding. So let's get straight into it. What do we mean by allocative efficiency? Well, we mean either that everything demanded by the consumer is being produced, and the whole notion of consumer sovereignty ties in very well with this. We're going to have a little look at the price mechanism, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Or sometimes you could be asked to just simply define this in an exam, and the way you could define it is simply to say that price is equal to marginal cost. In other words, the revenue received for selling the last unit is exactly the same as the cost of production of that last unit. So we'll have a look at each of these in turn. So in my previous video, I looked at a production possibility curve, or a production possibility frontier. And we can represent the whole notion of allocative efficiency on a simple diagram such as this, where we have two goods, Y and X. Now, either point A or point B could be allocatively efficient. If we knew, and if we were told, for example, in an exam question, oh, more of good X is being demanded. So if we started at point A, and then we're told that there's a sudden increase in the demand for good X, which would mean that the amount of good Y being produced would have to drop, so we move down here and we move along this way in order to increase the output of X. Well, that would mean that point B would, by default therefore, be allocatively efficient, because consumer demand has changed, and as a consequence of that, the supply or the output changes in order to accommodate that. Now, I think this is sometimes best explained really by way of our price mechanism diagram, which I'm sure you're familiar with. If you're not, I'll put a little card up to take you to a video on that. But here we have initial starting point, P star and Q star, and I'll just very quickly run through this. So if there's an increase in demand, let's say there's an increase in income, demand curve shifts to the right to D2, price, as you know, rises to P2. That acts as a signal for new firms to get into the market. New firms enter the market if it's a free market, no barriers to entry and all that jazz. And as a consequence, the supply subsequently increases, and we end up here at S2, where price is P star. Now, the price really is sort of by the by here. The key point here is that the quantity supplied in this instance has gone up from Q star to Q2. And what was it that brought about that increase in the quantity supplied? It was, of course, the change in consumer demand. So output changes in response to consumer demand. And so we could say that point B here would be allocatively efficient in that respect. So that's another way of illustrating it. Now, the final way that you might be asked to interpret this, and of course probably those of you doing your A-level exams, this will be it's certainly the most interesting in my view, is with regard to your market structure diagrams. Now, I'm not going to go through them all, but as you can see here, we've got the long run, perfectly competitive market. And as you know, profit maximization arises where MC equals MR, which is right here. And as a consequence, we would say that in the long run, the perfectly competitive market is, or the perfectly competitive firm is allocatively efficient, because MC equals MR. And as you can see, we're climbing up the MC curve here, and the revenue received from producing the last unit, the very last unit, is P star. And what did it cost to make? It cost exactly the same as P star, because that's where P star is the same as MC. And consequently, this particular market structure is allocatively efficient. Now, you'll know, of course, from your studies of market structures that that is not always the case, but for a perfect market, that is the case. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is allocative efficiency. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, follow me on LinkedIn, see what's happening, geekonomics.co.uk/events. See you next time.